Battle of Battle of Cowpen, South Carolina. American Army General Daniel Morgan. He was the American Continental Army commander. Old rough and ready Daniel Morgan, first cousin of Daniel Boone. They served together with the British forces under General Braddock in the French and Indian War and the failed attempt at Fort Duquesne. Afterwards, Morgan, in an argument with British officer, struck him and received punishment of 500 lashes, save one. His hatred of the British ran very deep after that. Later, he served in the U.S. Continental Army as far north as Quebec and then in the Saratoga Campaign before being sent south by General Washington, where he led with a military genius strategy, that's in your picture there, at the Battle of Cowpen, South Carolina, against 26-year-old Colonel Bannister the Butcher Tarleton, cavalry leader of British dragoons and foot soldiers called the Black Legion. Tarleton was the commander, the dragoon commander that had slaughtered some American Continental forces that came down after the fall of Charleston, about 300 men. He surrounded them. They asked for quarters. They surrendered, asked for quarters, and he put the sword to over 100 of them, slaughtered them. So the rallying cry in the South in the militia became Tarleton's quarters, which meant if you're in battle with Tarleton and you surrender, he'll just massacre you because that's what he had done. So anyway, this battle win resulted in the Patriot victory with enormous British casualty losses and captured and 39 officers killed. Also rallied the South Carolina militia and undecided North and South Carolinians to believe that they could win the war. The night before the battle, Morgan, a brigadier general now, visited around campfire to campfire all night long, talking to soldiers, young and old, many terrified by Tarleton's reputation of take no prisoners. Here is the battle that shows him slaughtering the U.S. Continental forces. The dragoons always wore the green jackets, and these guys were trying to surrender, and he slaughtered them. Morgan that night joked, asked about their lives back home, their wives and girlfriends, told war stories from his previous battles. The men greatly loved and admired this man. He also instructed the sharpshooters to get in positions in the trees around the battlefield and take out officers and Tarleton's green lagoons. Here is a picture of the battle. This is the battlefield at Cowpens. I've been there and walked around. It had some small hills where you had just enough room for troops to hide behind the hills and not be detected. This battle started at 7 o'clock in the morning. Tarleton had ridden his horses and brought his troops all night long. They were completely tired and exhausted. He got to the battlefield. It was foggy. He decided to charge. He fully expected the militia in the front line there that you see falling back to run and retreat when they charged, which they did. They were instructed by Morgan to retreat behind the seasoned militia guys. The front line are skirmishers, your young gung-ho raw guys that want to make a name for themselves. Well, they were instructed to take one shot and fall back, which looked like a retreat. So the British kept charging forward. The Continentals took their aim and fire at them, and then they peeled off to the side, and the Continental forces came up behind them to face off with the British. You can see the militia and the skirmishers circling around to one side, and in the back there is General William Washington's cavalry. They came up, engaged Tarleton, and you see him fleeing away. I should use the cursor. He fled away right over here, left the battlefield, left his soldiers surrounded by the Americans. They surrendered. The field was won by Morgan and the Americans. this was a great not turning point, because that happened at it was acclaimed anyway at Kings Mountain when the militia took out the Ferguson's militia. But this was a major battle scene. The Americans won the field, a lot of British casualties and surrenders. And okay, we have I got to stop this. We have a picture of the charge here of General Washington. General William Washington charged into the British. You've got dragoons on the ground. The difference in cavalry and dragoons is the dragoons will dismount and fight hand-to-hand combat with the bayonets. In the fray there, General Washington is charging in this picture. This is a scene from this battle. And the next scene's the same battle and a quote. There you go. Seldom has a battle in which greater numbers were not engaged. It wasn't that big of a battle, but it was so important in its consequences as that of Cowpens. John Marshall, the Supreme Court Justice, a statesman and a spokesman, made this statement about this battle, which was very, very instrumental in the Revolutionary War in the South. I've shown you the pictures there. I think I've worked all the way through this. Our next battle is Gullford Courthouse. Gullford Courthouse in North Carolina. After the devastating loss at Cowpens, South Carolina, Brigadier General Lord Charles Cornwallis, commander of the British forces in the South, and desperate to get a major win, chased and engaged Major General Nathaniel Greene, the fighting Quaker, who was second in command of U.S. Continental Army under George Washington, and also over the Southern Campaign at the Battle of Gullford Courthouse, now Greensboro, North Carolina, named after Nathaniel Greene. General Greene learned from General Morgan's strategy at Cowpens and was waiting to give General Cornwallis's troops the same results. After the first volley of musket fire were exchanged, and the British troops charged with bayonets fixed, Cornwallis was so determined to win the field that he fired grape shot from his cannons right into the fray, killing soldiers of both sides. General Greene called for his army to retreat, though actually taking less casualties than Cornwallis. Cornwallis lost a quarter of his whole army in this one battle, determined to win. Regardless, Cornwallis claimed he won the field and the victory. Part 4 finished.